Before we get started, let me explain the definition of eye tracking. Eye tracking basically measures where people look on a web page and for how long. Eye tracking data is presented visually, overlaid on the screen to where the subject is looking. Creating a successful web page or website requires more than just visually appealing designs. The most effective websites and apps create satisfying user experience based on how consumers track and read the information in the page. Eye movement tracking refers to the complete paths that the human eye takes when looking at a page, according to the many studies found by both designers and UX experts. The human eye naturally maintains an E or F pattern when looking at the web page or app. F patterns occur because users typically scan horizontally less and less as their eyes move forward. Sometimes people view the eye movement of E shapes instead of an F. When first landing on a page, usually the visitor's eyes jump to the leading image on a page and then go downwards to actual content. Visitors are usually unaware of the right side of the web page. Scanning is extremely common in higher literacy users. Lower literacy users plow text. How eye movement tracking applies to applicable web design. Eye movement tracking and web design. Various usability studies and their findings have determined how web design influences eye movement and tracking interactions. For example, button size. Increase the absolute or relative size of a button makes it easier for visitors to find and use. And also for placement, placing buttons and links that users most likely access on a normal basis next to each other will speed up the interaction by using pixel amount. And next is spaces. Visitors' eyes focus on blank spaces and are easily lost on poorly designed landing pages. When it comes to designing efficient websites, the goal of achieving this is having faster interactions, simpler user navigation, increased user return and satisfaction. Also, it increases the awareness of the company it represents, the brand, the name, the services it offers, and the advertisements it presents. Here's a tip when you are designing your website or app. You must always consider to place the logo at the top of the site and do not allow the head banner distract it to this important element. This is important when you're designing. It is catered to a specific company or to promote your website. Place the important content on the left side of the page. Navigation bars should be across the top on the left side, preferably across the top. Consider the F and E movement patterns when writing content and image layouts. The first two paragraphs on every page should state the most important information. Do not include a lot of text as users won't read it completely. Simplify it. Don't make it simpler. The importance of understanding the consumer's eye movement and interaction is increasing in business. Websites that are designed without user experience will become ineffectual with consumers and thus becomes obsolete in a very near future. Based on this study, in an eye tracking experiment, while testing participants' eye movements across several homepage designs, a common pattern was noticed. The eyes most often fixated first on the upper left of the page, then scanned in the area before going to left to right. Only after pursuing the top portion of the page, for some time did their eyes explore further down the page. Another interesting pattern emerged contrary that many would expect. Dominant headlines consistently kept users engaged, especially when they were on the left side of the page. Visitors instinctively gaze in on any logo or dominant headline that was displayed on the left side. Well, as you can see here, the graph shows the zones of importance of a web page. It will help you show how much your web design measure up with this pattern. It made logical sense to go in depth. Here is a bulleted list of important to-dos based on my research. Smaller type text encourage focused viewing behavior and large type promoted scanning. Longer paragraph formats discourages viewing. shorter paragraphs receive twice as many eye fixations as those with longer paragraphs. The longer paragraph format seems to discourage viewing. Visual breaks in text discourage people from looking at an item beyond breaks. People don't view entire headlines, only if the first words engages them. Also, a headline has less than 1 second to get the website visitor's attention, and people most often scan below the first fold on the homepage for a much shorter duration, looking for something to grab their attention. Describing how images were viewed, the studies restated things that we already knew and also some interesting observations. The most obvious ones: the bigger the image, the more time people took to look at it. Clean and clear faces in images attract more eye fixation on home pages. Here's a very interesting point. People often click on the images even though it took them nowhere. And for further suggestions, based on what we learned from this lecture, we can also apply one of the recommended advice when you design. Make sure the most important information, your call to action, or anything in particular, on the website Make sure the most important information is in the top left of the page. Make sure you use a strongly worded and relevant headline. Use faces in your imagery, as they are looking at twice more than the images with no faces. Make sure you use short paragraphs in your website copy, as it is far more likely to be read. People read text that is smaller, while bigger text is scanned. Make sure all your images click through to a relevant page, because people will try to click on your web design graphics. Now, with all these suggestions, you'll be able to use this to maximize user engagement and retaining the interest of our users, or visitors to our website. It may sound trivial to even know about eye tracking, but by being aware how people read and scan at a website or app comes a long way to maximize your user's experience.